All right, everybody. Today is Tuesday. We're going to be, your homework for tonight is to listen to this lecture on Prohibition. Please copy this into your notes, please. Um, Actually, let me get the camera really quick. Hold on. All right, that's better. I got the camera. So today you're going to be filling out your guided notes on Prohibition. We're going to walk through this so that way on Thursday we could kind of do some more fun things. All right, so Prohibition, kind of weird thing. We talked about this a little bit. We touched on it during the Gilded Age about how you started having this progressive movement starting during the Gilded Age, and right around 1900, about how Americans began to really look at how can we improve our country. And one of the aspects was our crime rates. Our crime rates were extremely high, and immigrants were to blame, but also alcohol was to blame as well. So they called, Prohibition. The women's groups and religious groups began really tackling this issue. Is alcohol, is it a moral thing? Should we ban it? So the government will take it to, they call it the noble experiment. So Prohibition, in 1920, the U.S. Congress, they will pass the 18th Amendment. Now, again, guys, amendments are not easy to pass. They're very difficult to pass. We only have 27 amendments that have been with us. Now, some have been added, but don't forget that the 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, those were the original ones, and since then we've only added 17 since the 1790s. So it's not something that's easy to do. But in 1920, they passed the 18th Amendment that made it illegal to make and to sell alcohol. So essentially, alcohol was banned. And then finally, as you see, 12. Now this experiment or Prohibition is going to last about 12 years, and then they passed the 21st Amendment that will, in 1932, that will basically end Prohibition, that will banish it. Let's see here. All right, so as we know with anything, if something is illegal and an illegal product, there are going to be people out there who are going to want to make money by selling something illegal. So they know they can make money off of it. So like when alcohol was illegal, you have organized crime units, gangs, the mafia, etc., are going to make and sell alcohol and make lots of money off of it. It's no different than like marijuana. Marijuana is illegal, but people still sell it and make money off of it. So very similar things. So organized crime units are gangs that are run by criminals who intend to engage in illegal activity to make money. Illegal activity is making and selling alcohol. So Al Capone was known for this. I'm sure you've heard of Al Capone before, arguably one of the most famous gangsters in the mafia of 1920. We'll talk more about him in a little bit, but he will make most of his money in the alcohol business, as well as many other ones as well. Will make large sums of money by selling illegal products like alcohol. Now, the question is now, how do they do it? This is, organized crime is a very, very elaborate system. You obviously have the boss and you have workers who work under you, but you also need protection, and you need protection from the police. So oftentimes these organized crime units will, pay off judges, pay off politicians, pay off the police, to basically turn the other cheek and let them operate and do their thing. So another vocabulary term, bootleggers. Bootleggers are the ones who make it and sell the alcohol. They bootleg the alcohol, they make their own beer, make their own alcohol, etc. Now, with any type of thing that you have, where you have cities like New York, cities like Chicago, cities like Los Angeles, where you have huge cities, you also are going to have formation of gangs within those cities. Not just one gang, you're going to have multiple. Like in Chicago, you had Al Capone and Bugs Moran were rival gangs that were fighting over turf. When you're fighting over money, fighting over turf, like selling your alcohol, selling your product, selling whatever you're trying to sell, you're going to run into turf wars. So there's going to be a lot of deadly gang violence. They're going to prop up during the 20s and 30s because of this increased selling of alcohol. That's going to lead to a lot of blood and gore, but also violence as well. And sometimes civilians who are not involved in the mafia are in these organized crime units are going to be caught in the middle, which you'll see the opinion about the organized crime units are going to change from beginning to end. It's more negative. So you see how the process works here. It's kind of hard to see in the background here of my picture, but here's like a lake here. You have speedboats that come up to the dock here, and you have the boats would probably be carrying alcohol, and they would load it into these cars, and from there they would distribute it to people who wanted alcohol. We'll get to that here in a minute too. So that's how that part works. No, because alcohol was illegal, you often had to be creative with how you carried it. So you have flasks, like this woman is carrying a flask of alcohol or liquor, and on her leg that was above her dress. So obviously you can't see that, so you can sneak that into restaurants and other places. You see the same thing right here, and then you see a bar right here as well that was formed. Now they call these speakeasies, so I'll get to that here in a minute. All right, so again, as I said, Al Capone was one of the most famous gangsters of the 20s. He was an immigrant, obviously coming from Italy. Family lived in New York. Very modest, poor upbringing. He grew up in a tenement, and we talk about that during the Gilded Age. Not the best living conditions. But he grew up in an area where there was a lot of gang activity, and school was not for him. He didn't like to be, let's say, bossed around, and he just wasn't. He was influenced early by a lot of the older gang members that kind of recruited him, and led him to this, life of, crime. He got the nickname Scarface because he got in a bar fight and somebody slashed a beer bottle across his face, leaving this big scar. He hated that name, but left a scar on his face forever. So that's one of the nicknames that he had. Johnny Torrio was one of the organized crime leaders in New York that really influenced Al Capone. Eventually, will basically be his teacher. And then eventually, Johnny Torrio got an opportunity to leave New York and go to Chicago. When he went to Chicago, he took Al Capone with him. Al Capone and Johnny Torrio were the men of the people. They really believed in helping people, the poor. They helped out the poor, giving money, giving turkeys on the holidays. And in Chicago, you'll see something called the Beer Wars that led to different gang and rival wars as well. Al Capone's also a very flashy person in terms of the media. He loved the media. He loved being kind of front and center. And Johnny Torrio really didn't like that. He was more kind of low key, didn't want to have a whole lot of attention. But over the course of Al Capone's career, he'll make over $100 million. That was in money back then. Today's money, that'd be a lot more, billions of dollars today. In 1934, he was sent to prison. You see this picture here. It says Alcatraz. It's in the middle it's in San Francisco. So if you ever go there, you can visit it. It's a museum today. But the reason they called Alcatraz the Rock because it's inescapable. Suppose I'll put air quotes around that, although there are some cases they believe maybe this group of brothers may have escaped from it, but it's in the middle of the ocean, shark infested, very cold, the currents are very heavy. They built this prison so that they needed somebody, a high profile person to put him in there, and Al Capone was very high profile. Now, out of all the things that he did in his life, he actually didn't go to jail for a murder. He went to jail for tax evasion, out of all things. Elliot Ness was an FBI agent that really could not bust him for murder or connections to any of these cases. Specifically, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where he massacred Bugs Moran men, but nobody could never really implicate him on that because of the alibis that he had. But he eventually busted him on tax evasion. So that's where he'll spend and live out a chunk of his life until he'll be released later on. All right, so Speakeasy. These began to be developed. These were like secret bars that were created where they sold alcohol. They hired jazz bands. So you might see like prohibition parties or speakeasy parties. What they would often do, they would have to hide these bars through secret doors. So they would have like a storefront in the front, like a pet shop or an alcohol or a hardware store, and then in the back would be like a secret club or a secret door that would lead you into a club where drinking began. So you see this here. It's a secret door. You look at books. You open the door and you go to the back where the little bar area was at and hide your alcohol. Um, there's a thing of people. You would knock on the door. You'd have to give a password in order to get in case the cops came, foldable tables. You could just take all the stuff and dump it in the wall and hide the booze, hide the alcohol. All right. So anyway, that is it as far as notes goes. I'll show you guys some things on Thursday that will make it more specific in terms of what you're doing. So anyway, adios.